saying, today is the first talk that we have of our formation series. And so today will be human formation. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about ultimate fulfillment and how every human person is searching for this ultimate fulfillment. And even more specifically, we're longing to be loved, to be happy, and to be free. And so we're going to start with a broad focus and kind of narrow it to what we're really searching for. So we desire to be loved, happy, and free. And a lot of times in our culture and in our world, we hear these distorted views of what we should really search for and what we're longing for. And the world and our culture tells us that to be loved, you need to be like the most handsome or most beautiful, most intelligent, funny, whatever it may be, talented. That if you have that, then you'll be loved and you'll be fulfilled. Or to be happy, you need to have a really good career and be really esteemed and have a lot of accomplishments and have lots of money so you can buy cool things and travel across the world, and then you'll be happy and you'll be fulfilled. Or to be free means to do whatever you want, to not have any rules, not have anything tying you down, and when you can do that, then you'll be fulfilled. But a lot of us here know, either from searching for it or pursuing those things on our own, or from our friends, that that does not fulfill us. That we actually long for something deeper than that. And so, as humans, we long for like a perfect version of each of these. And so instead of a superficial form of love that is tied to our appearance or accolades, we really desire to be loved unconditionally. That whether we are really beautiful or really talented, no matter what talents we have, that we're going to be loved unconditionally. And we desire happiness, but not moments of pleasure, not these fun times, but really a lasting joy. That no matter what happens in our life, no matter what, if it's like a good day or a bad day, we will have a lasting joy. So we really desire. And to be free, we desire a deeper freedom, not a freedom that our world tells us is freedom, that says whatever you want to do, whatever you feel like doing, that's what you do, because that's actually the opposite of freedom. That is enslavement. And if we think about it, it makes sense. If you feel like sleeping in and you're tired and you just go skip class, or you feel like going out and getting drunk, so you just go out and do it, or you feel like sleeping around, so you do it, you're actually not free. You're enslaved to whatever you feel like doing. You become a slave to your own desires, and that's not free. But you become free when you're actually able to choose to say, I feel like sleeping in, but I'm going to get up and go to class. That's when you're really free to do what you want, and you're not enslaved to whatever you feel like doing in those fleeting moments. And so this ultimate fulfillment that every human person has been seeking from the beginning of time, we've often been seeking in vain for these worldly pursuits or superficial forms of pleasure that aren't lasting, but God has created us to seek for something that will truly, truly satisfy us and bring us that ultimate fulfillment. And Matthew Kelly is an awesome Catholic writer, and he talks a lot about this in his book, Rediscover Catholicism. How many of you guys have read it? A few. Okay. Well, you might recognize some of the quotes. I'm going to share some quotes with you that he has. So the first one, he talks about this question of fulfillment, and if you want to be happy, what you need to search for. So he says, I guess it all comes down to deciding how long you want to be happy. If you want moments of happiness, I suspect pleasure and possessions can satisfy. If you want to be happy for an hour, take a nap. If you want to be happy for a whole day, go shopping. If you want to be happy for a weekend, go fishing. If you want to be happy for a month, take a trip to Australia. If you want to be happy for a whole year, inherit a fortune. But if you want to be happy for a lifetime, ... What do you guys think? What do you think that we need to be happy for a lifetime? Anyone? Shout out. Jess, do you have something?
A relationship with Jesus Christ.
A relationship with Jesus? Yeah. Anybody else have any other ideas? Okay. Yeah, Jess, a relationship with Jesus that inspires us to strive for holiness. So I'm going to boil it down a little bit further that if we want ultimate fulfillment, it really results from us striving for holiness. And now some of you might be thinking, or you might, if you tell this to a friend, that, oh, to be really fulfilled, you need to strive for holiness. They are going to think you're crazy. Because oftentimes, we or our culture or world has this false perception of holiness, where you might imagine like a really old woman dressed in a sackcloth that doesn't watch TV or listen to music and is in chapel every day and leads 5,000 Bible studies or something like that. But we have these false perceptions of holiness, of what we think that is, and how it often, like in our minds, looks very boring and dull. But that's actually not true at all. The true and genuine form of holiness, striving for holiness, is this deep desire to improve oneself and an unquenchable concern for others. So a desire to improve oneself and then a concern for others. That's what it truly means to strive for holiness. And Matthew Kelly talks about this again, of when we're striving for holiness, it's actually going to make us come alive. So I'm going to share another quote. He says that holiness brings us to life. Holiness refines every human ability. Holiness doesn't dampen our emotions, it elevates our emotions. Those who possess holiness are the most joy-filled people in history. They have a richer, more abundant experience of life, and they love more deeply than most people can even imagine. They enjoy life, all of life. Even in the midst of suffering, they are able to maintain a peace and a happiness which is independent of the happenings and circumstances around them. Holiness doesn't stifle us, it sets us free. So I just love that quote in there because it touches on every single thing that we really long for. It talks about that they will, what does he say? That it has, elevates our emotions. So we desire to love and be loved, but striving for holiness elevates that love to be a more truer form of love. He also talks about the most joy-filled people in all of history, even among suffering. So that joy, that happiness, and then he also says that they have a peace independent of what's happening around them. So they're free. They're free from whatever external circumstances are going on, but they're actually able to have this zeal, this excitement, to strive for holiness. And if we look at the lives of the saints, it's so evident that this is true. How many of you guys have heard of Blessed Chiara, is that say? Chiara, Blessed Chiara. How many of you guys have heard of her? A few? Okay. I printed out the picture because I'm a visual person. But this is Blessed Chiara, and she was an Italian teenager. She died in 1991, so she's like a modern day in the process of becoming a saint. And she got diagnosed with bone cancer when she was 16 years old, and it was a very, very painful form of bone cancer. And when she got this cancer, and everyone around her, her parents and everybody was getting really sad, she just had so much joy because she's like, it unites me to Jesus, that I get to experience some of the suffering that he went through. And when she was suffering, she said, I can offer this up in prayer for those around me. And I have some quotes from her that she said in response. So like I said, it was a really painful form of cancer. And when she got diagnosed, she maintained this joy and this peace. And when she was in the hospital over a really long stays, and her pain was increasing and increasing, she would go on really long walks with a girl that she met in the hospital that was struggling with depression to bring her friend joy. and her mom and her parents would say, Kiara, stay in bed, you need to rest. And she said, no, I need to be Jesus to my friend that I met. And when her hair started falling out, you know, as girls, we're really attached to our hair, at least I know I am. But when her hair started falling out, she would say, it's all for you, Jesus. It's all for you, Jesus. And then with her mother, as she prepared her funeral with her mother, as she approached close to death, she was so excited, and she was like, Mom, I don't want anyone to be crying at my funeral. I want them to be singing because I'm about to be with Jesus in heaven. Because it was that real and tangible to her, that this holiness, that heaven was real, and that's what she was created for, and that's what she was striving for. And one of her last words that she told to her mom, she said, oh mama, young people, they are the future. You see, I can't run anymore, but how I would like to pass on to them the torch like in the Olympics. Young people have only one life, and it's worthwhile to spend it well. So Blessed Kiara was just really inspiring to me when I was preparing this talk, because she was so young, and she, you know, didn't do anything huge and inspiring. And in the eyes of the world, she got cancer and passed away. But from her striving for holiness, how much that inspired others to live out their faith, to set their eyes towards heaven, and to seek something beyond this materialistic world that we live in. And so we are called to do that too. Like she said, she desired to pass that torch on to young people, which is all of us in this room, which is really awesome, that we have the potential, that we only have one life, and we desire to live that well, and to live that well means striving for holiness. And even more specifically, striving for virtue. So we're going to get down even more specific here, that to be fulfilled, like Kiara was, because if we think about it, she was in a lot of pain and suffering and died at a really young age, but from everything you read about her, hear about her, she knew she was loved unconditionally by God the Father, and she loved others with so much love. Even when she didn't feel like it, even if it didn't feel good to her, she was always seeking and had a concern for others. She was joyful amidst great suffering, and she was free to do that because she wasn't attached to anything in this world. And so she's just an awesome example for us that we can in turn strive for that by striving for virtue in our life. And so if you guys were like me, in elementary school, we had like a different virtue we had to focus on every month, and that's what virtue is to me, like compassion and charity and patience and all these things. But the actual definition of virtue is the habitual disposition to do the good. So habitual, like a habit. So basically, when you develop, it's your habit to do the good, to choose the good, that's when you obtain a virtue and possess that virtue. There's even further 3 characteristics that when you're able to will the good consistently, and it's like your second nature, your instinct to will the good, and you're able to do it joyfully. So you're not like, oh, I have to go care for the poor, but you're like, yes, I need to go care for the poor. That's when you actually obtain that virtue. And so if we want to be ultimately fulfilled, we need to strive for holiness, and even further strive for virtue, to possess those virtues, to be fully human. And if we think about it, virtue, when we're able to do that, like let's say, even if you feel like you get frustrated with someone, or they annoy you, and you want to be impatient, but you're able to actually choose to be joyful, and to be patient, and to be kind and loving them, that's when you obtain that virtue, and that's going to be inspiring to those around you, to will the good, to consistently do that. And if we see that, we look the lives of the saints, Blessed Kiara, Mother Teresa, all these saints lived a life of virtue, but it wasn't something that they were born with. And a lot of times we can think that oh yeah, she's called to holiness, or she's able to be holy, but not me. That's, you know, I'm way too way too impatient, or whatever it may be that you struggle with. Oh, I struggle with chastity, sobriety, whatever it may be. Every single saint was a sinner, and they died a sinner, and just like us, and we're still called to do that. It's something that we have to choose, that we have to strive for, and it's something that's going to free us to be able to love others as we ought to. And actually, when we fail to have virtue, we fail to love those around us. And Evan and I have witnessed this, especially in married life, because going on your first date, all that is exciting, and you actually feel like you want to love someone. You feel the emotions and the romance and all that. But then there comes a point in every relationship where those feelings go away. But that's okay, because those feelings are not actually love. But actually choosing to love, choosing to will the good of the other, is when we truly have that virtue and are able to be fully human and truly fulfilled. When we're living a life of holiness and striving for that. And it might be hard for you to believe, but sometimes it's actually hard to love Evan, especially when he looks like a Sasquatch. But it's in those moments that's beautiful, where I can say, I am tired and I don't feel like loving, but I'm going to choose that. And that's a purified form of love. And I know he feels the same with me when he's frustrated with me, and I'm annoying him and doing something that he doesn't want me to do, but he chooses to love me unconditionally. That is being truly alive and truly human, truly loving. And that brings you fulfillment, because you're not enslaved to whatever you feel like doing, but you're actually able to be an inspiration to those around you, and grow in your faith. And so I want to leave you with a little spiritual exercise that my spiritual director once shared with me about growing in virtue. Because a lot of times I'm like, yeah, that's great, I want to be a good person, but I don't know where to start. And so there's 4 little things that you can either take a picture after or write down if you're taking notes. But I just want to encourage you to take to prayer, because it's a really awesome way to figure out, Lord, where are you designing me to grow, to be more fully human, fully alive, to be more fulfilled? So the first thing is to ask yourself, what's your biggest vice or sin? So I'll share my personal one with you. Mine is vanity, just a really distorted view of caring too much about what other people think, or worried about what other people think about me. So just praying and asking, Lord, where am I struggling the most? Where am I most wounded or fallen? And then the second thing is, what's the virtue that's going to help you overcome this? So for me, mine being vanity and caring what others think about me, so the virtue that I wanted to really grow in was humility, of having an awareness of who I really am as a daughter of God, of being satisfied with that alone, no matter what circumstances were around me. So then identifying the virtue. The third step is coming up with an image of the virtue. So something like an image or a scene or something that you can imagine in your head that inspires you to grow in that virtue. So it might be, for you, imagining Blessed Kiara in the hospital, suffering and dying, but being joyful because she had to see Jesus. Whatever virtue, if that inspires you to grow in a specific virtue. For me, it was the image of Jesus in the Eucharist. Of just taking time to contemplate that the God of the universe became bread, became something so humble and so little to nourish me and to fulfill me. And he doesn't care if people believe or don't believe that he's there, but he still becomes the form of bread and wine for me and for all of us. So that image really inspires me to not care what other people think about me, but to just love and be present. And then the fourth step is to think about scenarios where you often fall, or for me, where I would be most vain. So it would be whenever I meet new people, or especially older people, that I would worry about what they think about me, or go to principal when I was a teacher, stuff like that. In those situations, I always try to put on a show instead of just be who I was. So thinking of those scenarios so that when they come up, you can A, pray about them and say, Lord, like, I'm about to go meet a bunch of new people. Please help me to be humble. Or please help me to be patient. Whatever you need to work on, you can pray and ask God for the grace to help you grow in that virtue. And then B, so you can actually think back to that image and it can inspire you in that moment when you're tempted to fall. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that? So that's just a spiritual exercise that you guys can take to prayer and ask God, where do you want me to grow? Where can, what virtue can I work on that can help me be more fully human so that I can be more fully alive? Because ultimately, Evan touched on this last time, that we're going to cover human, spiritual, intellectual, apostolic, but it all starts at human. Because it doesn't matter how many Bible studies you lead or how many people are in your down chain for discipleship. If you aren't someone who loves others purely and are joyful and patient and all of those virtues that are actually contagious, it all starts at the human level. To ask yourself, is your life worthy of imitating? And even more, is your soul, is your heart worthy of imitating? Because that's going to make us be true, authentic Christian leaders that have contagious love and joy and zeal for the mission that others want to imitate, that others want to follow, and that inspires them to do so. And all of the discipleships, the Bible studies, all that will fall into place when we become more fully human and more fully formed in a life of virtue. And it leads back to our own personal fulfillment. Because if you're a good person and you love others and you will the good of the other, and you desire to become the best version of yourself to offer to the world and to your families and to others, you're going to be satisfied. Because you have your eyes set on heaven, and that this world is just temporary, and that that's what we're seeking. And you're going to be able to share that with others here at Missouri State and long after that in your vocations, and in your families and in your parishes.